My friends, in this world full of noise, distractions, and constant demands on our attention, there comes a time when we must make a decision, not a loud or dramatic one, but a quiet, steady commitment deep in the heart. And that decision is this: to focus on ourselves, not in selfishness, not in pride, but in the sacred act of seeking clarity, purpose, and direction from within. Because when we pause long enough to turn inward, to truly reflect, we begin to hear a voice we've long ignored, our own. You see, we live in a time where everything around us tells us to chase after what others have. We scroll through a world of highlight reels. We compare our beginnings to someone else's middle, and we measure our worth by the likes, the titles, the noise. But God didn't design you to be a copy of someone else. He didn't breathe life into you so you could spend your years chasing shadows. He created you with a purpose so specific, so uniquely tailored, that only you can walk the path that is yours. But how can we walk it, my friends, if we've never taken the time to discover where it even leads? When you focus on yourself, not in arrogance, but in humility, you begin to ask the right questions. Who am I really? What do I believe in? What keeps me up at night? And what stirs my soul in the early hours of the morning? These aren't questions the world can answer for you. These are questions answered in stillness and prayer and solitude and in truth. And then here's the beautiful part. When you stop looking left and right and begin looking inward, clarity begins to rise like the sun at dawn. You begin to see that your gifts aren't meant to match someone else's. They're meant to serve a specific purpose in your life and the lives of others. Your journey, with all its twists and turns, isn't a mistake. It's a message. But you can't deliver that message if you're too busy chasing someone else's assignment. When I speak of focusing on yourself, I speak of discipline, of rising in the morning not to check what the world is doing, but to check in with your spirit, of taking inventory of your heart before you take on the opinions of others. It's about learning to sit with yourself long enough to understand your own rhythm, your own call, your own voice, because when you know who you are, you stop being shaken by every storm that rolls in. Some people go through life tossed back and forth by circumstances, one day up, the next day down, depending on what someone said or didn't say, what happened or didn't happen. But those who focus on themselves build from the inside out. And when you build from the inside, you don't collapse when the outside world shifts. You become rooted, anchored, unshockable. Now, I want to be clear, this kind of focus isn't always easy. It means sometimes stepping away from the crowd. It means turning down the noise and being alone with your thoughts, with your fears, even with your regrets. But there is power in that process, because what you confront, you can change. What you accept, you can heal. And what you discover, you can nurture into something mighty. Some of you listening today feel like you've lost your way. You've poured so much of yourself into other people's expectations, other people's dreams, that you don't even recognize your reflection anymore. But let me tell you something, it's not too late. God hasn't forgotten you. Your purpose hasn't expired. You just need to shift your gaze from what everyone else is doing to what you are called to do, from what's out there to what's in here. This is the beginning of clarity, the beginning of purpose, the beginning of a deeper motivation that doesn't fade when the crowd walks away. Because the truth is, when you focus on yourself, you discover that everything you need has already been placed inside of you. And once you've seen that, once you've truly seen the fire of God lit within you, there's no turning back. There is a truth I want to share with you today, and I pray it settles deep in your heart. Comparison will rob you of everything God has placed inside of you. It will steal your peace. It will poison your joy. And if you let it, it will drown out your purpose with the noise of someone else's journey. We were never meant to measure our worth by the pace of another. We were never meant to find our value by looking over our shoulder at what our neighbor is doing. Yet that is the trap so many fall into. It starts small. You see someone else succeed, and a quiet voice whispers, "Why not you?" You see someone further along in their path, and a seed of doubt begins to grow. That seed, if left unchecked, can grow into bitterness, envy, even despair. But let me tell you something, my friend. God didn't make you to be someone else. He made you to be you. You were not called to live someone else's life. You were not meant to follow someone else's script. You are one of a kind creation handcrafted by a God who does not make mistakes. And yet the world teaches us to compare everything. We compare our looks, we compare our careers, we compare our relationships, our families, even our struggles. But comparison blinds us to what we already have. It distracts us from the blessings right in front of us. It causes us to forget the grace that has carried us this far. And more than anything, it pulls us away from the focus we so desperately need to move forward. You see, when you focus on yourself, not selfishly, but intentionally, you begin to realize that your journey is not behind schedule. It's not too small. It's not too late. It's just uniquely yours. And when your eyes are fixed on your own path, there is no need to glance to the left or to the right. You don't need to match the rhythm of someone else's race. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. You just need to be faithful where you are. The enemy of growth is often not failure. It is distraction. It's losing sight of what you were called to do because you're too busy watching someone else do what they were called to do. That kind of distraction slowly kills motivation. It robs us of the energy we need to invest in ourselves because all of it is being spent watching someone else live their life. But oh, when you let go of comparison, when you turn your heart back toward your own calling, something shifts. You begin to feel a deeper joy, a steadier peace, a more lasting motivation that isn't based on applause or attention, but on alignment with who you truly are. You stop waiting to be chosen and you start choosing yourself. You stop chasing validation and you begin walking in purpose. And I want you to know, friend, that your pace is still progress. You may not be where you thought you'd be by now, but you're further than you were yesterday. You may not have the same gifts as someone else, but you have something just as powerful, your own testimony, your own experience, your own light. And the world needs what only you can bring. I've seen it too many times. Good people, faithful people lose their way because they try to become what others expected of them. They buried their true selves beneath the weight of imitation. But I believe today can be different. Today can be the day you stop trying to prove yourself to others and begin proving to yourself that you were enough all along, that your story matters even if no one claps for it, that your worth was never up for debate. There is power in knowing who you are. And there is peace in staying in your lane. Your calling, your journey, your struggles, your victories. They were designed for you. And no one can take that away. Not rejection, not failure, not delay. Because what God has for you is for you. And no amount of comparison will make it come any faster or make it any sweeter than walking faithfully in your own time. So I urge you from the depths of my heart, stop looking around for permission to live fully. You don't need it. Look within up and walk boldly forward. There's something sacred about the quiet things we do when no one is watching. The daily steps, the private battles, the small decisions. These are not the moments that make headlines, but they are the moments that shape the kind of people we become. And let me tell you, my friends, motivation isn't something you stumble upon by chance. It's something you build one quiet habit at a time. We often wait for a lightning strike of inspiration to push us into action. We wait to feel strong before we move, wait to feel brave before we try, wait for the right time before we start. But life doesn't work that. Motivation doesn't always begin with emotion. Sometimes it begins with obedience, with choosing to show up even when you don't feel like it, with doing the small, hard thing again and again until something within you begins to change. That's the beauty of focusing on yourself. When you take your eyes off the world's chaos and set your attention on the ground right beneath your feet, you begin to realize that progress isn't made in leaps. It's made in steady, faithful steps. The kind you take every morning when you decide to pray, to read, to breathe deeply, make your bed, to speak kindly, to do the right thing when it costs you. Those choices, those habits, they may not seem grand in the moment, but over time they create a foundation so strong that storms cannot shake it. Think about a tree planted in rich soil. You don't see its roots growing, do you? You don't hear the stretching of each fiber underground. But over time, those roots dig deeper, stronger, until that tree can withstand the fiercest winds. And so it is with us. The daily disciplines we practice, often unnoticed, are what anchor us. They form the roots of character, the roots of faith, the roots of purpose that allow motivation to last beyond the emotional high. The world will always promise quick fixes. It will shout about shortcuts, instant results, and effortless success. But real strength, real change doesn't come from what's easy. It comes from the small decisions no one applauds. It comes from choosing discipline over distraction day after day. You see in the daily repetition that you find your rhythm. And once you find your rhythm, being the motivation becomes less of a mystery and more of a natural result. Let me tell you, my friend, when you begin to honor the small, you begin to unlock the great. Meaning that when you commit to daily habits, when you wake up and choose to show up, you begin to prove to yourself that you are trustworthy, dependable, and strong. That kind of self-belief doesn't just appear. It is earned through consistency. And that consistency begins the moment you decide that your growth matters more than your comfort. It doesn't have to be loud. You don't need the crowd. You don't need recognition. What you need is a decision made again and again to keep going, even if it's slow, even if it's hard, even if it feels like nothing is changing. Because I promise you, something is changing every time you choose progress over perfection, every time you rise after a fall, every time you say yes to growth when no would be easier. You are becoming something stronger than the world has ever known. You are becoming faithful. And I believe the Lord honors that kind of faithfulness. He doesn't overlook the small things. He sees every quiet effort. He hears every whispered prayer. He notices every time you choose what is right over what is easy. And he uses those habits to shape you, to strengthen you, and to prepare you for the purpose he placed in your life from the very beginning. Don't despise the small beginnings. Don't overlook the daily disciplines. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to commit to changing something every day, one choice, one step, one prayer. That's how you climb the mountain. That's how motivation becomes a lifestyle, not just a feeling. And when you build a life around that kind of focus, when your habits begin to reflect your highest values, nothing can take that from you. No failure, no criticism, no delay, because you become rooted. You've become ready. And that, my friend, is how greatness begins. There's a stillness the world doesn't talk much about anymore. A quietness of heart that doesn't come from having everything you want, but from knowing who you are. A calm that doesn't depend on circumstances being perfect, but on something deeper, something steady within. My friend, that stillness, that peace is not just a gift, it is a weapon. And when you learn to focus on yourself and protect your inner peace, you unlock a kind of strength that no storm can shake and no enemy can steal. We live in a world of noise, constant demands, endless opinions, pressure to do more, be more, achieve more. But let me tell you something, noise doesn't equal progress. Motion doesn't always mean momentum. There are folks running in circles, busy every moment of the day, but going nowhere inside because they haven't found peace. And without peace, there is no lasting motivation. Without peace, your focus scatters, your energy drains, and your heart gets weary. But when you begin to tend to your own spirit, when you slow down enough to listen to your soul, you begin to realize that productivity isn't just about what you're doing. It's about what you're carrying. Some of us are trying to build something good while carrying worry, resentment, and fear. That's like trying to run with weights tied to your ankles. You might move, but you'll be exhausted and you won't go far. That's why focusing on yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. It means giving yourself the space to breathe, the time to reflect, the grace to rest. It means stepping away from the noise long enough to hear the voice of God again. That still small voice that reminds you don't have to strive to be loved. You don't have to compete to be seen. You don't have to wear yourself out to prove your worth. You are already enough in Him. When you begin to prioritize peace, you start to see everything differently. You no longer make decisions out of desperation, but out of discernment. You no longer chase after what's flashy. You move toward what's faithful. And that shift right there, that's where true motivation is born. It doesn't come from pressure. It comes from peace, because peace clears the clutter. It opens the way. It sharpens your vision. When your mind is still, your direction becomes clear. When your heart is calm, your steps become steady. You might think, but I've got too much to do. Too many responsibilities, too many people counting on me, and I understand. But let me ask you, what good is your effort if it's costing you your peace? What kind of legacy are we building if we're too drained to enjoy it? My friend, burnout isn't a badge of honor. Weariness isn't proof of worth. We were not created to run on empty. We were created to rest in the Lord, to renew our minds, to move with wisdom, not just with speed. And that peace, true peace, it isn't found out there in the world. It's found within. When you begin to focus on your spirit, your habits, your thoughts, and your walk with God, the world might not applaud it. They might not even understand it. But there is nothing stronger than a person who has made peace with themselves. A person who can be still in the storm, who can stand tall even when things fall apart, who doesn't need chaos to feel alive because they've learned how to live from a place of calm strength. So many are chasing motivation in the wrong places. They think it's found in the next big success, the next opportunity, the next applause. But motivation that lasts, motivation that carries you through dark valleys and silent seasons is built on peace. And peace begins when you stop trying to be everything for everyone and start being true to who God called you to be. You don't have to fix everything today. You don't have to figure it all out at once. But you do need to begin protecting the wellspring of your spirit. Guard your thoughts, guard your time, guard your energy. Don't let every worry in the world take up residence in your mind. Don't let every demand determine your direction. The Lord has given you wisdom. He has given you discernment. Use it. Use it to filter out the noise and focus on what truly matters. And when you do, when you center yourself in peace, you'll find that your motivation no longer flickers with every wind. It burns steady. It endures. It guides you through the chaos because it's not rooted in what's happening around you. It's rooted in what's been made right within you. That, my friend, is where real strength is born. There's a deep longing in the human heart, a longing to be seen, to be known, to be affirmed. From the time we are children, we're taught to seek approval. We learn early that a kind word feels good. That applause brings comfort. That recognition gives us a sense of worth. But over time, if we are not careful, we begin to depend on that approval like it's air, and we forget how to breathe without it. But, my friend, I want you to know something holy tonight. There is a deeper way to live, a stronger way, a way not built on the shifting praise of others, but on the firm foundation of who God says you are. And it starts when you stop waiting for the world to tell you you're enough and start learning how to tell yourself the truth. When you begin focusing on your own path, not to impress, not to perform, but to truly grow, you start becoming your own source of validation. Let me say this as clearly as I can. You don't need the world to prove what God has already confirmed in you. You don't need a platform to be powerful. You don't need applause to be anointed. You don't need a spotlight to shine. Some of the greatest strength you'll ever know is born in silence, in the quiet moments when you keep showing up, even when nobody's clapping, even when nobody's watching. The problem with chasing validation is that it never satisfies. The crowd cheers today and forgets tomorrow. One moment you're lifted up, and the next you're left alone. If your motivation depends on approval, your spirit will rise and fall with every opinion that passes by. But when you build your worth on something deeper, something eternal, nothing can shake it. When you focus on yourself with honest intention, when you cultivate your heart, when you develop your character and live with integrity, something begins to shift inside of you. You no longer work to be seen. You work because it's right, because it matters, because it honors the calling you've been given. And isn't that what this life is truly about? Not impressing others, but being faithful with what you've been given. Not chasing popularity, but walking in purpose. I've met many people, good people, who spent years trying to prove themselves to others, trying to be liked, to be accepted, to be admired. But it wore them down, it exhausted their souls. And when the voices faded, they were left empty. But I've also met a few, just a few, who walked a different road. They were quiet, steady, unshaken. They didn't need the spotlight to validate their worth. They had something inside that no one could give them and no one could take away. They had peace, they had truth, they had confidence not built on applause, but on alignment with their God-given identity. You see, when you start being honest with yourself, when you learn to celebrate your small wins, to keep your promises to yourself, to stay consistent in your discipline, you begin to respect yourself. And that respect is where motivation grows, not from hype, not from recognition, but from the quiet confidence that says, I am doing what I was called to do. That kind of motivation doesn't fade when the room goes quiet. It doesn't depend on the response. It's built in solitude, in prayer, in discipline, and in truth. And when the world comes at you with criticism, with doubt, with silence, your motivation doesn't die because it was never built on them to begin with. The truth is, my friend, when you begin to validate yourself, when you choose to believe you are enough, when you affirm your own growth, when you find contentment in doing what is right even when no one notices, you become free. Free from the pressure to perform, free from the fear of judgment, free from the chains of comparison. And in that freedom, you move differently. You speak with more conviction. You live with more joy. You love more deeply. You rise not because someone told you to, but because God placed it in your heart to do so. And if nobody claps, that's all right. If nobody sees, that's all right, because your Father in heaven sees. And He is the one who truly matters. His validation is everlasting. His approval does not change with the tides of culture. And when you know that, when you walk in that, you no longer need the world to tell you you're enough. You already know. That, my friend, is where lasting motivation is born. There's something remarkable that happens when a person decides to stop performing for the world and starts living with purpose. When you truly focus on yourself, not to be selfish, not to shut others out, but to grow into the person God called you to be, you begin to change. And the change doesn't just stop with you. It spills out. It moves through your life and touches others, often without you even realizing it. Because when you walk in truth, others feel it. When you live with quiet strength and integrity, people notice. When you become whole, you become a light. We live in a time where people are constantly trying to make noise to get attention, to be seen. But the loudest voices are not always the strongest. The most visible platforms are not always the most powerful. There's a kind of influence that doesn't need to shout. It simply lives. It breathes in daily decisions, in faithfulness, in kindness, in perseverance. And that influence begins the moment you stop trying to change the world and start allowing God to change you. I want you to hear this deep in your soul. Your growth is not selfish. Your healing is not just for you. Your breakthrough is not only about your life. When you begin to rise, you give others permission to rise too. When you begin to overcome, others begin to believe they can overcome as well. You don't even have to say much. Your life becomes a testimony. Your peace becomes a sermon. Your strength becomes example. And people will look at you not because you told them how to live, but because you showed them what it looks like. You don't need to preach to inspire someone. You just need to walk in purpose. You don't have to be perfect to lead someone. You just need to be honest. People are not looking for more noise. They're looking for something real, something steady, something that proves faith still works, hope still heals, and discipline still bears fruit. And when they see it in you, when they watch you quietly, while he'll quietly press on, they begin to believe they can too. This is the power of focusing on yourself. It creates a ripple effect that moves through your home, your friendships, your workplace, even your community. And it doesn't come from control or manipulation. It comes from transformation. That's why you must keep showing up for yourself. You must keep honoring what God has placed in you. You must keep growing, not just for your own sake, but for everyone your life is going to touch, many of whom you may never meet. There will be people who never tell you, but are watching you. People who are encouraged by the way you carry yourself, by the way you remain calm under pressure, by the way you speak with grace, by the way you rise again and again, even when life knocks you down. And all of it begins with the decision to focus on the inside before trying to fix the outside. The world doesn't need more noise, my friend. It needs more people who've done the inner work, who know who they are, who are not by ego, but by purpose, who are not swayed by trends, but grounded in truth. That's the kind of life that inspires change. That's the kind of life that makes a difference, even when nobody is looking. I believe God is calling many of us to live this kind of life, not for the sake of attention, but for the sake of legacy, not to impress, but to impact. And that begins not with a crowd, but with a quiet decision, a choice to turn inward, a choice to become the kind of person who doesn't need a spotlight to shine, a person who walks in integrity, who leads with love, who moves with courage, and who keeps going even when it's hard. Because when you focus on yourself and walk the path you were meant to walk, others will be drawn to that light. And when they come close, they won't see perfection. They'll see perseverance. They won't see pride, they'll see peace. They won't see someone trying to be better than everyone else. They'll see someone trying to be better than they were yesterday. And that kind of life, my friend, is more powerful than any platform, more inspiring than any speech, more lasting than any moment of praise. That kind of life is a testimony all its own. And that is how your focus becomes a light in someone else's darkness.